This is a special edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Allen. With all the stress, anxiety, and really pain of COVID-19 that people are experiencing, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to speak to a man whose nickname is Dr. Pot. His name is, I don't even know his name. His name is Dr. Rob, and we're going to spend some time with him right now. He is the owner and founder of Dr. Rob Farms out in the Palm Springs area, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. Dr. Rob, tell us, is cannabis, because that's what we're talking about here, is cannabis something that Americans should embrace?
I feel so. Well, but first and foremost, Mark, I just want to say thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here. Should Americans embrace cannabis? I mean, I would say so, but I might be somewhat biased. But you know, one of the things that I always like to say is, you know, it's a fairly benign medicine when it comes down to it. It's not all rainbows and sunshine. However, when it comes down to acute toxicity and things along those lines, not all that toxic. You know, there's a term called LD50, which stands for lethal dose, where 50% of a sample population were to die from that lethal dose. And this is what a lot of researchers and scientists use to determine the acute toxicity of certain compounds. We know what the LD50 is for compounds like cyanide and arsenic. They're very low LD50s because those are very toxic compounds. But we also know what the LD50 is for water, for salt, for sugar, for things that we consume every single day. You can die from drinking too much water. However, we don't really know what the LD50 is for cannabis. And I've heard some people making estimates for the average person. It's around 150,000 grams, which is more than my body weight. So first of all, congratulations if you can consume more than my body weight in cannabis. But
it's like 300 pounds, he said, almost 300.
Yeah, it's over like 300 pounds or so. And so it's one of those things where you're not really going to have a acute toxicity. Now, there are issues with chronic use and things along those lines. However, for your average person, it is a fairly benign medicine, and it's something that, because you don't have that acute toxicity, you're not going to overdose, and you can explore it a little bit. And one of the great things about a lot of these cannabis cultivars in these times with COVID-19 is a lot of them provide some very strong anti-anxiety properties.
Right. You've called cannabis a medicine. Is it a medicine or a supplement? And the reason I ask that is because here at Late Night Health, we believe that it should be a supplement and regulated that way. If it's a medicine, Big Pharma is going to say, move over, Dr. Rob, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it's a very complex issue because oftentimes with medicines, you know, I'm talking something like aspirin, you know, there's one active ingredient in aspirin. You know, there are, you know, 113 known cannabinoids in cannabis. The University of British Columbia relatively recently discovered another 21, and a couple months ago we discovered, you know, THCP and CBDP. So there's a lot of active ingredients in it. And on top of that, the terpenes themselves also have medicinal value. And beyond that, there are the flavonoids. You know, flavonoid 1 and flavonoid 2 were just recently discovered, and these actually might be the parts of the cannabis, the secondary metabolites in cannabis that actually do provide these anti-tumor properties. You know, the way I see it too is CBD. It's a partial agonist to the serotonin receptor. And so, you know, serotonin is that good, you know, the feel good, they call it the happy hormone, things like that. You know, and so something that is causing, you know, and reducing anxiety, you know, through the CBD consumption, I would call that a medicine. However, at the same time, because it's so complex and all the things that it can do, it's very difficult to really pinpoint what it does do. Luckily, once again, the acute toxicity seems to be relatively absent with cannabis, and so people can go out and explore and help and see what it can do for them.
How did you get involved and interested in cannabis? We should point out that you have a doctorate, basically.
But I'm not yeah. According to my mother-in-law, my doctorate is not a real doctorate. I have a Ph.D. And one time my mother-in-law and my wife and I were driving along in a car. My mother-in-law mentions that, she said, you know, I wish we had a doctor in the family. My wife's like, well, Robby's a doctor. It's like, oh, no, I mean a real doctor.
Yeah.
So I don't have a medical doctorate, but I have a Ph.D. in plant biology with an emphasis in environmental horticulture and a specific expertise in hydroponic crop optimization and cut flower production and controlled environment agriculture from UC Davis, which I'm very proud to say UC Davis. This is the Cal Aggies right here. UC Davis was recently voted the #1 plant science school on the planet by U.S. News and World Report, #2 for ag sciences. And so, I was technically trained by one of the top universities on the planet to grow crops, cut flower production, which that's all cannabis is cut flower production in controlled environment agriculture. And, basically if you're not growing outdoors, you're growing in controlled environments. And so my expertise really is optimization for growing. And so I've always been a big fan and big proponent of pushing for, clean medicine and clean cannabis. One of our mottos at Doc Rob Farms is good science, clean cannabis. And so everything we do is, evidence-based decision-making, using science to really guide us and how we grow the crop. And so,
And one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure that the crop that you're growing is non-GMO as well.
Yeah, so there are no genetic modified cannabis crops right now. Now you might be talking to the wrong person about GMOs, because I'm a scientist, and GMOs are using transgenes in GMOs. That's one thing. Now cannabis is genetically modified, as opposed to use conventional breeding techniques. So there aren't we aren't inserting transgenes in cannabis right now.
Right, or anything like Roundup into the nucleus of those DNA.
Yeah, exactly. And transgene would also account for something like that. And, I don't think that's the way to go down the path. This is a fairly holistic, crop, in my opinion. You can get away with quite a bit without having to, resort to those types of, and I actually don't really agree with that type of thinking for a lot of the crops that we consume. But, once again, there's a lot of science out there that shows that GMOs as a whole aren't really terrible. I mean, we've all been eating it, so that's a really big science experiment.
Yes,
but at the same time,
since like 1997,
yeah, exactly.
But they didn't tell us.
Exactly right. Now, having said that, I want to see the science. I want to see the evidence that proves that it is safe. And so, we never really did that. We just kind of started doing it, and we haven't seen really too many things that we can say with statistical analysis and say there's a significant increase in said symptom because of transgene consumption or GMO consumption. But at the same time, cannabis doesn't have that available right now, and I don't think it will in any time soon anyway. Cannabis is one of the crops. People who appreciate cannabis are not appreciative of that type of work with crops in general, and I don't think it's necessary in any way. At least at this point, you can grow some very, very high quality product using conventional methods, and that's kind of where I'm coming from.
And to keep everything clean, and at the same time provide a healthy product. Let's talk about your background further. We grew up blocks away from each other, it turns out, a few years apart, but in the San Fernando Valley. And I guess you were an outdoor guy. You like to hike and things like that. Is that how you got into the plant world?
The reason why I got into the plant world is twofold. One of them is for is for my grandfather. My mom's dad. He was born and raised in the island of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm 50% Maltese. And when he came to the United States, Malta is literally just this dry rock in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. And so there's not a lot of area for doing, farming. And so a lot of people had to just grow their own food. And so when my grandfather moved to the United States, he eventually settled in the LA. Well, it's funny because he actually settled in Detroit first. And then during World War II, he's stationed in Los Angeles for just a quick second. And he's like, what am I doing in Detroit? LA reminds me of Malta. So he moved the family to Los Angeles and eventually settled in Vista, just north of San Diego. And, but the entire time he always grew his own crops, and he always raised, animals and things like that. And so I was always very intrigued. I emulated this man. I I wanted to be like him. And so I would always follow him everywhere he went. When he was tending to his plants and his animals, I would help him along. And so, when I got into, when I was in high school, I very quickly realized that biology is where I'm going to be ending up in my career. And I was always thinking like, okay, well, maybe, exercise biology, animal biology, something along those lines. But then it was when I was at UC Davis, and the reason why I was at UC Davis, I was recruited to play football there. I remember very distinctly, I think it was I believe it was my
Excuse me,
sophomore year.
I have to say, can you imagine, folks, having a world-class wine study place and the
Mhm.
football players at the same time? I don't know if they use the wine. Anyway, I just popped into
And
my head.
not just wine, but beer too. I mean,
Oh, beer too. I forgot about that.
it's one of the top brewing schools. It is the top wine school on the planet as well, and one of the top brewing schools in general. And in all honesty, right now UC Davis is moving forward on cannabis research as well. So hopefully soon, the top cannabis school in the world. They definitely have the brain power to do it. So
Right.
cannabis is just another plant, is how we see it.
So, and what about your family when they realized that you were, you're helping to grow pot, and
Yeah.
at a time when it was illegal, and in some cases it still could be illegal.
Yeah, my family's always been very supportive. They I'm an academic, I'm a scientist, and if you ask an academic about cannabis, they're like, it's just another plant, it's not a big deal. And my family sees it the same way. When I first launched Doc Rob Farms and I was rolling joints for one of our products, my mother-in-law actually helped me with said rolling of joints. But my this is very closely related to my family, because when I was when I first got in the cannabis industry, I was working as production director at Spark in San Francisco, and I remember very distinctly receiving a phone call. And this was many moons ago now, but I remember receiving a phone call from my mom, and she was letting me know that she was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. Now, luckily, they caught it very early. She is currently cancer-free, but she had to go through all the chemo and radiation, had 2 bouts of surgery to remove tumors, and I was in the dry cure space at Spark, literally surrounded by a ton of weed, and this stuff that I'd grown. And my mom went to college in the 60s, was invited to a pot party. Literally, I'm not even joking. She thought she was going to a Tupperware showing party.
That's what I
So
wanted to
she's
hear.
very, very naive when it comes to cannabis. However, I said, Mom, I'll give you some access to some product for you that I knew was clean because I had grown it. I wasn't putting plant growth regulators on it. I wasn't putting any pesticides on it. Cannabis, unfortunately, is very susceptible to fungal infections. And there's this one fungal, there's a systemic fungicide called myclobutanol. And so it's actually inside the tissue of the plant. It's very effective, but it's also, when you heat it up, it releases hydrogen cyanide. And so I was seeing a lot of people back then who were growing illegally, but they were using this. And I'd say, hey, you can't use this product on the medicine. You're turning this medicine into poison. And I would either hear like, oh, okay, well, what can I do? Or I would hear people say like, oh, I don't care, which kind of blew my mind. And so I'm thinking to myself, hey, Mom, I can get you some product. I got some clean stuff here that I've grown. I know it's clean. And she's like, that's perfectly fine, but I don't want to smoke. I don't want to vaporize. I only want edibles. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, everything that I've grown that I know is clean is meant for smokable or vapable. So that means I'm going to have to go source an edible. And I'm thinking to myself, am I about to poison my mom? And that was really that kind of the birth, the light bulb moment for Doc Rob Farms. I have this technical training and quite a bit of experience in growing cannabis on a large scale and optimizing it. And so that was really my kind of let's do this.
I mentioned that I received a petition yesterday, about a quarter of an inch, actually probably over an inch thick, here in Southern California where I live. And it's a petition saying we want to cultivate or grow, sell, and process cannabis in the county. And where I live in Ventura County is an agricultural area, great strawberries and oxnard, lettuce, radishes, everything. And we have some tomato plants out that way, and we're going to be planting those later today or tomorrow morning. My point is, we are an agricultural area, and it would seem to me that this would be a great crop because we have the land and we have the expertise in
Mm-hmm.
in growing a variety of things, including a lot of hydroponic areas
Yeah.
in Ventura County.
Yeah.
So the thought is growing marijuana, cannabis, legal any place at this point? Truly 100% legal.
Yeah, I mean, during this time of COVID-19, the state of California says that cannabis businesses are essential businesses. There are people who need cannabis. There are people who are dealing with, with cancer treatments, and cannabis is what's helping them get through it. And, growing in Ventura County is a great option, in my opinion. There are going to be microclimates you want to avoid, and, cannabis does not like a lot of humidity. So, sometimes the morning fog that's coming through and the June gloom and whatnot that comes through might be a little bit detrimental. But this is a plant that likes a lot of light. It likes a rich soil and deep soil. They call it weed for a reason, because it can grow like a weed. But for really high quality products, it does require a good amount of attention. And so, controlled environment agriculture, which is my love, is because I'm a scientist and I like to tinker and things like that, is a great way to do it. So greenhouses, which are found, widely in Ventura County, are great places to do it. But outdoor production is fantastic as well. There's a reason why the Emerald Triangle exists, and outdoor production in Humboldt and Trinity and Emerald and Mendocino County are so pervasive. It's other than it was so remote for so long, but
Right.
it's also a very good place to grow. So
Got it.
Essentially, California is great in general for production for cannabis, just because of the amount of sunlight we get.
What kind of products can be made from this? I mean, we've talked about, a joint. We've talked about an edible. I told you the other day about my story about eating a chocolate brownie. I felt like somebody had mowed grass. We may hear that happening in my yard in a minute. Not pot grass, but grass with the gardeners. My point is that it was icky to me. I don't think they really knew what they were doing, and they forgot to tell me that there was cannabis in it, which was a big no-no.
I'm a big proponent. I'm very much against people being medicated unless they know they're being medicated.
Yeah.
That's definitely a big no-no. I very much agree with you. But there are a lot of products. One thing I definitely want to say is, we've all heard the terms like joint and spliff and blunt, and those are actually different things. A joint is just ground up cannabis, and usually can be in a hemp paper or some type of paper. So it's all cannabis that you're smoking. A spliff is the same thing as a joint. However, you also grind up tobacco with the cannabis. And a blunt is a ground up cannabis, and usually in a tobacco cigar wrapping. And so those are different things. But beyond that, there are many ways to consume. Vaporizing. You can actually vaporize the flower straight up. And it's just, instead of combusting it, you're just heating up, and the cannabinoids and terpenes are volatilizing off, and you consume that. So, a lot of people see that as a safer way to consume cannabis as opposed to combusting. But, outside of that too, you can take a sublingual, you can have an eyedropper and, drop some activated cannabinoids, onto the body, underneath your tongue, and the cannabinoids actually can be absorbed through the mucous membrane inside your mouth.
Wow.
But also, you can eat it. You can have an edible, like you had mentioned with that brownie. Now, edibles are a little bit different when you consume an edible, because then it gets processed through your liver. And so that Delta 9 THC becomes, I believe it's Delta 11, I have to double check, but Delta 11 THC, which then binds to your CB1 receptor a little bit differently, but also has a higher permeability across that blood-brain barrier. And so there are things that are different about it, but once again, there's that acute toxicity is not really there. So there's many ways to consume. I mean, people with rheumatoid arthritis, which is basically an inflammatory disease, can rub lotions on their hands, and they see great relief because cannabis is such a strong anti-inflammatory. So there are many ways to consume, and I know this may sound a little bit weird, but I truly believe that one of the best ways for anti-cancer properties is actually a suppository. That may sound weird, but the reason why is because you can have for the anti-cancer properties, you tend to have a lot. and you don't want it processed through the liver. And so actual suppository is usually the best way to go for
And
that.
are you manufacturing those, or will
We're
you?
not manufacturing suppositories. We know a group who does, and I think it's a very good way to do it for a lot of cancer patients as well.
And what about for preventive measures for cancer?
So we have seen some studies that show that cannabis can help prevent it, and it might be more of a function of those who do get cancer early on. The consumption of cannabis is helping eliminate it very early on before it's even detected. Now, once again, I'm a scientist. I will always say we need more research. There are a lot of claims, a lot of anecdotal evidence that we see, but anecdotal evidence is fine and dandy, and it usually will lead to research projects. But it's not something we can say, like I can say with 95% confidence that, this leads to that. But, without a doubt, we do know that cannabinoids and the terpenes oftentimes are very strong anti-inflammatories, but also strong antioxidants. So it's one of those things where, we see that anti-inflammatories and antioxidants tend to be good for preventing a lot of other diseases. So why not this? We just have to do the science to prove it.
Got it. Uh, where is Dr. Rob's? Where is the Dr. Rob Farms going? What do you want to see happen with it?
So Dr. Rob Farms, what we do at Dr. Rob Farms is, a couple things. Obviously, we provide products to the community. And so there's that front-facing side of, these are Dr. Rob Farms products. These are, products that were grown, using science and evidence-based decision-making, but also keeping in mind that the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm sincerely very passionate about helping people. I mean, my mom is one of the big proponents of the reason why I did this, but also my grandfather too, on my mom's side, he actually died from brain cancer, and he never had the opportunity to use cannabis to help him get through that. And so I'm very passionate about that side of the things. But also, one of the other things that we do at Doc Rob Farms is we grow the cannabis ourselves. And so there are a lot of brands that they outsource where they grow it from. But this is my passion. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I love to do. And so we grow it ourselves. We also grow it for other people, and we help people out and consult. And I'm a big proponent of it. Together, everyone achieves more mentality, and lift everyone up together and make sure that cannabis is available for as many people as possible. I truly believe that this world will be a better place if more people consume cannabis. Now, I'm not saying that cannabis is for everyone, but for those that cannabis it is for, I don't want them to have that, the reefer madness propaganda in the back of their head telling them, no, we shouldn't be consuming this because it's bad or it's evil, or the devil's lettuce or jazz cabbage or whatever people want to call it.
Or a gateway drug. We talk, gateway drug.
Yeah, I mean, if you notice, I don't use the term marijuana. I use the term cannabis. First of all, cannabis is the scientific term for it, but marijuana was a term that was used to weaponize cannabis and to make people in America feel as though it's coming from Mexico and basing off of racism to try to make it sound evil, which to me is fundamentally offensive. But at the same time,
that started in the 30s, because up until the 1930s, marijuana, cannabis was. It wasn't widely used, but it was used. Hemp was grown.
Yeah.
And today, hemp hearts, and people use hemp hearts as part of their diet because of the anti-inflammatory part of the hemp plant. It makes no sense to me to say, I know you're dying, I know you have pain. No, you can't have this, even though we know it'll help.
Yeah, it's just mind blowing, and so education is a huge part of what we do. Scientia potentia est, right? Knowledge is power, and the best way to educate and to help people is to provide knowledge. And I'm not saying I have the answers for everything, and I think anyone who's making that claim is fooling themselves, lying to themselves, or maybe you don't know what you don't know, so they just don't know. But I will always say that I do happen to have a good amount of knowledge around the plant, and I'm happy to share that and educate it. And but that's so scientia potentia est. It's fundamental.
Well, this has been fascinating. Will you come back sometime? We'll
Yeah, absolutely.
continue this. I
This has
hope
been a
you
lot of fun.
enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you. Uh, Dr. Rob Farms, and we've had the URL. You can visit the website. There's a lot of information there. And while a lot of it is for the industry, a lot of it is also for consumers. And I think you should take a look at it from that standpoint to learn about cannabis, what it can do. Also, do you do a deal in CBD as well? I didn't even ask about that.
Yeah, we have a microdosing CBD tablet called Mom's Formula. It's named after my mom. But we're very much focused on the growing side of it as well, and growing the good quality CBD cultivars. I said cultivar, not strain, and there's a reason why. It's because strains are actually meant for fungi, bacteria, and viruses. Cultivar is short for cultivated variety, and that's what we use for plants. So sorry, I'm a nerd.
That was Botany 101, everybody.
Exactly right, yeah. And so there are a lot of great CBD cultivars that we focus on as well, but that's where we like to get into the marketplace.
Real quick question. A lot of CBD products claiming to help with sleep, anxiety, and pain relief, but the dose is 25 milligrams. Is that enough? Have you
it really depends on one's tolerance. I usually like to say if you want to do microdosing, you start off around 2.5 milligrams, but 5 milligrams usually is the floor that you start off at. Move up from there. I know people who consume thousands of milligrams of CBD on a daily basis, and partly because their tolerance is so high, but at the same time they're using it to treat cancer. And when you're using, you really want to use this full plant extraction. You're not just using CBD as an isolate, although there is benefits to that as well, but you get significantly more benefits if you're taking it in this what's called entourage or ensemble effect with all the other cannabinoids and terpenes. But yeah.
Got it. Well, we will return sometime soon with Dr. Pot, Dr. Rob Flannery. See, I did know his name. I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much for joining us here on Late Night Health. I'm Mark Allen. This is Late Night Health. Join us at latenighthealth.com for more. We'll be back very soon. Bye-bye for now.